Hello, and welcome to the W.A.I.T channel. What Am I Thinking? A podcast where two sisters share uplifting conversations on fun and sometimes serious topics.
Join us each week by clicking the notification bell and subscribing to our channel. If you enjoy the show, use the share link. It's one of the best ways to expand the conversation.
Welcome to the W.A.I.T channel. What am I thinking? Today's topic is cancel culture. And I'm sure you have heard that word because unfortunately it has become a part of our life now, where individuals literally are losing their careers on and their jobs based upon certain things that they may have done 5 minutes ago,
So Tracy,
and sometimes 50 years ago.
Before we even get into it, why don't you just start by giving the definition of what cancel culture is, because we want our listeners to know from what vantage point we're talking.
So what cancel culture is when there is an outcry, whether it be most times through social media, for someone to lose, whether it is their political position, whether it is their TV jobs, their actual jobs, their careers. They lose a way to make a living, basically, because of something they have said or done that the society deems as irreparable, like horrible, very, I don't like using the term politically incorrect, but it's something where they have been tone deaf at some point in their life. And the thing that is kind of different about it is the time frame, because it could be something you could have made a post 10 years ago and it resurfaces and you get punished for that post today in real time. So looking at it from several vantage points, does the time frame of when it was made matter? Does it matter that you can do something to redeem yourself from it? So we're just going to talk about it from several vantage points and just see. I don't think you can say is there a right or wrong in it, but we just want to look at the reality of cancel culture today.
Okay. And one of the things that really come to mind with me are how so many campuses and college professors and instructors are being attacked because of the curriculums that they have or courses that are being framed not to retell history, but to tell a true history.
Right.
The importance of evolving as human beings is learning about ourselves, and sometimes we learn that what we thought we knew,
Right.
we didn't.
Right.
So you do have to go back and you have to correct it.
Right.
But when you have governments, an entire state telling teachers, you will lose your funding if you talk about slavery in this country in another way or in a way that we don't approve of.
Right.
You will lose your funding if you talk about Black Lives Matter or the disparities between how white police officers police in black communities or vice versa.
Right.
What has happened is, in my estimation, because you have a segment of our population who realizes that by telling the truth, it might make certain races or groups of people look bad. And what their ancestors did, and maybe even what they are doing. So the way that you, or the way they think, to deal with it is just say you can't talk about it at all.
And the sad part about that is they have taken a term that critical race theory.
Oh, yes.
And which they don't even know what it really means and where it evolved from, and are trying to say like we're trying to put it in elementary schools. Critical race theory was something that was meant for college campuses, which is what you were talking about, and really trying to see if there were aspects of the way it was taught or a certain incident and things, trying to fully examine it and analyze it and see, were we correct on it? Is there something that needs to be changed? It was never about elementary, middle school, high school students. It was for a college campus, which is a learning ground,
right,
which is a place where you're supposed to be able to have thought-provoking conversations, and that's supposed to be a safe space to do that. And then they took it and tried to say, because some teacher probably inappropriately and not understanding it fully themselves may have said, I'm going to do a critical race theory project with my class. And it took off from there.
Well, you know what happened with No Child Left Behind, and how they took that to a whole nother different level. So
so you easily see how things get distorted. And so we know that there are people, as I will say almost probably every podcast, that are extremists. And extremists took it and have turned it into something totally of what it's not, and has caused, as you said, people to end up having to edit or change their curriculums or be called out for something that nobody even cared about some years ago, because it was a college campus and that freedom of thought was supposed to be there. But then you have others in the same vein that colleges kind of want to have it both ways, because they want it to be the space where you can have this free thought and all these conversations and whatever you need to do to correct history or tell it the way it actually was. But then you have certain speakers that want to come on college campuses, and because of things they have said or done that pop segments of the student body don't agree with, that they want to in turn close their mouths.
You can't have it both ways.
You cannot have it both ways. And so just like you can have that freedom of thought and have that conversation, allow this person to come in. Anybody that wants to hear them, let them go hear them. Because guess what? They get to add that thought to their mindset and choose to believe it, disbelieve it, or whatever. It's supposed to be a space where that is okay. Because people, remember, different is just different. You don't have to villainize and make everything bad and evil just because it's not what you believe.
So let's go back to what you opened up with, a tweet that was sent 10 years ago.
Okay.
And, fast forward, your mindset has kind of changed about things, but they dig it up. And now you're demonized and villainized with it. What do you feel about that?
Well, I think it's one of those situations where you, number one, have to take ownership and accountability. And all you can do is speak your truth from the vantage point of where you are now. But it's unfortunately up to the public whether or not they want to give you the space and time to be able to accept that. And to say that that's enough, because I've seen it work both ways. I've seen some people be able to move past it. I think of the Kevin Hart incident with the Oscars and how he didn't end up doing the Oscars, but his career did not get totally tarnished. He was able to go, I want to say, on Ellen DeGeneres' show, and she supported him and was able to help him to keep moving forward. I think about Eddie Murphy with things he has said and done in his past comedy shows, and how people wanted to use that to villainize him, and he has still been able to maintain his career through that. More recently, Dave Chappelle had an incident, and how all these are African American comedians. But
Franco.
Okay. So Franken.
Right.
He didn't fare so well.
No, not at all.
But he went into the political career arena, and
the bar is a little,
and it's a different standard.
Yeah.
And even though he may have still considered himself a comedian during the times when these things happened, and I want to say he might have, because I believe it was like a SOS show.
I think that's why he was there.
And so, and I believe, and so at that time he wasn't a politician, but they still looked at it. And the thing, his timing was so, if it had happened, I'd say a year later, he would have been able to stay in the Senate.
Right.
He would have been able to, but it was at the height of
the Me Too.
Them trying to make a point, and trying to make it with politicians, in particular someone in a very high office, and they just felt like they couldn't afford to let him have a pass while they were trying to make a point for this other person. So his timing just sucked that he was that happened, because it was, to say the degree to which it was egregious is not for me to say, because I'm not the person who was on the receiving end of his of the incident. So that's not for me to say. But I hate that it happened that way, and I really think that the timing of it, he was.
I think when you think of culture, we know that what was acceptable 100 years from now. I think of the honeymooners, Alice, to the moon.
Yeah.
And it was said almost every show where violence within a marriage and in a home, it was the norm. And it was, whether norm or not.
Well, I wouldn't say they'd say that's a norm, but it was in a way that was comedic and acceptable.
It was acceptable.
Right. Because, a woman's, the fact that she would say some of the things that she got to say, some women even saw that as empowering, that she
liberating,
had,
that
she even had the voice that she had.
Yeah.
So, I think that we've come so far, but yet we haven't.
So what that speaks to is sometimes our knee-jerk reaction when we do become aware or woke, as they say. I think that before we react, maybe we need to step back, because like you said, when you look back on...
So you mean people shouldn't be so impulsive?
Well, yeah.
Yeah. So then you need to shut down everybody's social media account, because that gives people that voice to be able to put it out there.
But that's what I think is important.
Quickly.
Because the lesson in all of this, especially today, you can't say or post everything that pops in your head without stopping to think for a moment.
Repercussions, consequences, for sure.
Because even if you pull it down, did somebody screenshot it?
Correct.
Did they record it?
Correct.
So what I tell people is, when you put it out there, it's there forever.
Right.
Even if you take it down.
Right.
It's there forever.
Right.
I think that's the lesson we've learned today. Unfortunately, you can't learn a lesson. Well, you can learn a lesson, but you can't take away what you did 5 years ago, 10 years ago.
Right.
So you do have to face up to it.
Right.
And it's how you behave, how you take responsibility for what you did or said. That's where the measure should be.
And there is room for grace.
Absolutely.
There has to be room for grace. And I think that's the part of cancel culture that gives me pause, is that, do we leave space for grace? Do we leave space for individuals to redeem themselves? Who are we to question someone's motives? And, people learn and grow. I pray everybody learns and grows. And I know in our own lives where we have had belief systems that we were raised with and things that we were taught, that as adults we had to change our thinking.
Right.
And it was life experience.
Right.
It was learning and exposure to things that helped us to transform.
Right.
So if someone were to have a recorded conversation from when I was 20, it would be a whole different position than where I am today. Should I be harshly judged and thrown away? And guess what? Even if it was 20 minutes ago that I thought one way, but I learned something, I had a conversation with somebody, and guess what? Now I see it differently. Should I be punished because I just ran into somebody who helped me understand that better? I don't know. I mean, because it makes people, it doesn't leave room for growth. And we are, I always tell clients, people, our thought lives are very busy. And sometimes they can be shameful to us, the things that we think in our head. But I always tell them, you are not your thoughts. You're only the actions and behaviors that you allow yourself to display. So you control those thoughts. So just because you have that horrible thought, if you don't act on it, emote on it, react on it, you can still hold that thought captive and cast it out. So thank goodness people don't have access at this time to our thought life. But to say that people have bad moments and missteps, and it happens. We are human. And I think of some of the individuals who have gone through this, and I'm like, where's the grace a little bit?
So would you say that the judgment that we have is rooted in our own fear of shame?
Maybe
And one of the ways we lift ourselves up is by looking at what someone else has done. Oh my goodness, that was awful. You're a horrible person.
Right.
Because we don't want, like you talked about, the thought life.
Yes.
We know we might even be thinking things, but they don't know what I'm thinking. Oh, but you did it.
Right.
I think that because we are so fearful of a finger pointing at us or us being judged.
Right.
We're very quick to judge other people.
And that's what they're saying. But for the grace of God, there go I,
Right.
It could be you.
Right.
It could be your child.
Right.
So I just want us to be a society that leaves room for growth, forgiveness, for that grace, for redemption.
Right.
We should not, when I think of things, horrible things that individuals can do, I want to always believe that redemption is there for everyone from everything, because that's the God that I serve that's there. So how can I be harsher than the God that I serve? And if there is grace and forgiveness from God, how can I not lend that to man?
And the important thing with that is to realize we work on that grace every day.
Every day to get better at it. And so, I know I would hate to be the one who's on the victim side of it.
Yeah.
Because I know for them, they probably feel there's nothing sometimes that the individual could do to make it better and redeem themselves. And they have the right to feel that way. So I don't want to take that away from them. But as I said, we never know what shoes we have to walk in and what comes before us and how people take things out of context. There are things that we could say that someone could take a snippet of it and run with it,
and that has
and not have listened to the thing in its entirety. So I just say that we've got to be careful with the cancel culture. There are some people that probably legitimately, if not to be canceled, at least need to be put on pause. And maybe we can have a pause culture instead of a cancel
That
culture.
would be good. Yeah.
So that
Yeah.
it leaves room for grace.
Right. Right. I think as human beings, we need to learn to be kinder to each other, to communicate, to talk. Talking's okay. Compromise is wonderful.
It's wonderful.
And what's best is we can agree to disagree.
Yeah, and we have to learn and grow and leave room for that growth because, as long as you're living, you need to be learning. Thank you so much for listening to this session of What Am I Thinking Today? Please make sure that you tune in next week to hear the conversation and to subscribe so that you won't miss any of our sessions on a weekly basis. Thank you for tuning in.